Hello everyone. Hello learners. Welcome to my channel of Learners Insight. Here we are going to explore all the different Azure certifications and we will go with a deep dive with each of the course curriculum. So at first we are targeting for AZ104 certification, which is Azure Administrator. So for that we are going to cover the module of identity and access management, and also we are going to see the concepts of role based access control. So we will be exploring the both platforms for authentication and authorization of each of the identities. So let's go ahead. I would like to welcome all of you on board with this learning journey. Please do like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can feel free to ask any number of questions that you want. So, at first, since we are starting with AZ104 certification, we will be first redirecting to the case study. So, here's a link to the case study. I have already opened it. I will also pin this link in the YouTube video that I will be uploading. So, to open this link, you can see here we have the study guide for AZ104. Now, how do you get this study link? So, you can refer to the link given in the chat. Also, you can open the page for AZ104, and as you open the first Microsoft Learn link, you click on that, and this is your AZ104 introduction, where you must have a subject matter expertise in implementing, managing, monitoring, and organization's Microsoft Azure environment. Also, you can see there are some prerequisites that one must have before starting the journey with AZ104. In this link only, we have this AZ104 study guide. If you click on this, it will open to the study guide for AZ104. So since we are starting our journey with identity, so we'll be following all the methods and all the topics which are covered from the Microsoft perspective. So here you can see Microsoft has maintained a weightage for each of the domains. Also, this particular weightage will be in reflection in your certification examination as well. So as we see for the identity part, it has a weightage of 15 to 20 percentage, which is quite big. So we must focus on the identity part very well. So here you can see we have AD concepts that we will be exploring, such as users and groups, also access control, along with Azure subscriptions that we will be covering in the identity part. So you can scroll down to explore more of the storage concepts, and then we have the virtual machine concept, app services, which is again a compute unit of Azure. Then we'll be seeing the virtual networking part and the monitoring part along with the backup. So this is the study guide for AZ104. Similarly, you can find the study guide for any other certification which you are aiming for. So going back to the main link, here you have to score 700 marks to pass this certification examination. So if you want to view some exam preparation videos, you can click on this and you can view your examination prep videos, right? So it's a 36-minute video. I will also pin this link in the YouTube channel. So let's start our journey and let's explore more onto our topics that we have. So we have a weightage of identity and governance of 15 to 20 percentage. Management of storage is 15 to 20 percentage. Deploying and managing of Azure compute resources is 20 to 25 percentage. Configuring and managing virtual networks is 20 to 25 percentage, and monitoring and managing Azure resources is 10 to 15 percentage. Let's first understand which are the topics we are going to cover. So these are the topics that we are going to see along with the users groups, administrative units, bulk updates, RBAC, policies, groups, and everything mentioned in this. So we'll be going in a detailed in-depth video of what identity is and how can we authorize those users to access different resources. So the first thing that we need to understand is what is Active Directory, And how is it different from the on-prem directory solutions that we have? When we discuss about the difference between them, for the Windows Server Active Directory, we also have the Active Directory suite, which is also called as ADDS. And for the Azure, the directory solution is Azure AD, also written as Azure AD. In Azure AD, we try to access the resources based on HTTP or HTTPS communication, and in ADDS, we try to use the protocols such as Kerberos and LTLM for authorization, and we try to establish a LDAP connection for accessing our services or resources in the on-prem. Here, any connection doesn't go over the internet, but any connection which is directed towards our Azure platform is fully internet based connection. Also, we can see that when you are authenticating the users, whether it is in on-prem or the Azure, the protocols is totally different. For the authentication of the Azure Active Directory users, we use SAML, OpenID, OAuth, and WS Federation. Whereas here we have Kerberos and NTLM. Similarly, if we want to use the federated services or federated users, so for that you have to avail the services in the on-prem known as ADFS. Whereas in Azure Active Directory, federation is an inbuilt part. So we can easily invite our guest users with a B2B guest users concept. But for doing the same, you need to avail ADFS in the on-prem solution. So let's understand what is Active Directory. Active Directory is a Microsoft multi-tenant. We'll be understanding what a tenant is, cloud-based directory and identity management service. Azure AD helps to support users to access the resources and application, internal resources and apps located on your corporate network, or we have any external resources or SaaS applications, also any cloud applications which are dedicatedly developed for your organization. You can access them easily when you get authenticated with Azure AD and you have the proper permissions of authorization with Azure Active Directory RBAC or the AD roles. So the first thing that we need to understand here is what is a tenant. So whenever you create an account on Azure, the first thing that will be created is a default directory or a tenant, which is nothing but a representation of your organization. So let's understand, an Azure tenant is a single dedicated and trusted instance of Azure AD. Each tenant represents an organization. To make things more clear, if we have one tenant, sorry, so if we have one tenant, it represents one organization. That means you can have more than one tenants as well. This is a representation of your second organization, tenant number 2. Tenant number 3 will be representation of your third organization. And they are all part of the same account. But what is the difference is that each tenant will have their own set of users or groups and own set of resources and subscription. It is not linked to tenant 2. Tenant 2 will have another set of users and groups and resources and subscription. Similarly for tenant 3. So you can have number of tenants. That is why Azure Active Directory is called as multi-tenant cloud approach. So because each tenant is dedicated and trusted instance of Azure AD, you can create multiple tenants or instances. So since we were discussing the difference between ADDS and Azure AD, right? So let's understand these services do authentication of the users and will make sure that we have the proper authorization for the users. Let's understand the difference between them. Authentication and authorization. To understand that, let's open the paint here. So we have a tenant within which you have the set of users or groups. These users and groups are called as identity. And these identities are either authorized or authenticated, right? So when we say authentication of the users, it is verifying who the user is. So basically verifying who you are. And authorization is a representation of what permissions do you hold. So when we say authentication of the users, we verify the user ID with the help of a user ID or password, or we can have multiple factor authentication where we require more than one authentication method for the user. But when we talk about authorization, even when the user is authenticated, he does not have any permission associated with him. So, to perform any small operation, he has to have permissions in the form of roles. And this will define what all activities can the user perform within the Azure portal or within the Azure CLI or PowerShell or Bash scripts. So until and unless user has those permission, he cannot execute certain actions in the portal. So, to understand this concept better, first we need to have a clear idea about the tenant. So, when we talk about the tenant, as you can see here, we are logged into the Azure portal. This is the Azure portal where here if you click, you will be redirected to the home page. Here you can search for a specific service. Also, you can manage your resources with the help of PowerShell or Bash script, whatever you want. For that, you have to attach a storage as well. You can manage multiple directories or tenants and certain settings from this option. Any notification will be notified with this option, and this is the representation of your directory. So here you can see my name is Learner Insight. The email ID is learnerinsight2021 at the rate outlook.com, and this is my domain. As you can see here, that we are into my default domain, default directory, right? So to understand this concept better, let's spin up a service which is known as Azure Active Directory. So here it is. We'll click on this and we are redirected to the default directory that we have created. So in this default directory, I'm using the free license and this is my primary domain. This is my default directory. So this is my tenant representation. That means I have users in my organization which are totally restricted within the boundaries of a tenant. So I can have more than one users. In my case, I am the user learner insight with certain permissions. So if I go back to my default directory, here in the overview section, I have manage tenant option. If I click on this, whatever number of tenants I have within my account. So I have one more tenant with the name of Learners Community, which is an Azure Active Directory tenant. So I want to switch to this. I can easily switch to this account. And as we switch to the second organization, in this I will be having separate set of users and separate set of permissions with those users. If we see on the overview part, we are no more into the default directories. We are into the directory of learners community and the name is learners community. This is the second tenant ID and this is my domain. So any a time if you want to toggle back, you can just click here in the subscription panel and you can switch back to your default directory. So for now, we will be doing all the operations with our default directory. In case you want to work with additional tenants, you can toggle between the different tenants you have within your organization, or you also have an option to create a new tenant with the help of manage tenant option. You have the option to create. So I will be showing a small demo in which I can spin up a different organization, which is Azure Active Directory organization. So I will keep the name of the organization as Learners Tech, and this will be our domain, learnerstech.onmicrosoft.com. We'll just give a small space in between. This is the location. Then we have the review and create, and then we'll click on create. It is asking for an additional verification to prove I am not a robot. Anyways, I am not a robot. So SPL and submit. So if your captcha is correct, the tenant creation process will happen and a new tenant will be created. To view those tenants, you can go back to your default directory, and here we have the manage tenant options, and you can just wait and refresh until your third tenant comes up. So it usually takes some time to spin up. So we'll come back to the Azure portal and we'll be seeing that a new tenant named as Learners Tech is created. So for now, it's taking some time, a few minutes it will take. So here we can see we have the Learners Tech already up and running. So here this is a separate tenant. You can switch to this tenant or you can make this as the default tenant. For us, we have already a default tenant with the name Learners Insight 2021. So we'll be working with this default directory. We are already in the default directory. So we'll go to the home page. Now let's understand that when you are working with the ADDS or Azure AD, what is the difference between them? So as we have already seen, ADDS is a primarily the directory services, while Azure AD is a full identity solution. Azure AD is designed for internet-based application, whereas AD supports target strong identity management. Also, Azure AD is HTTP or HTTPS based, but it does not use Kerberos on NTLM as it is being used by ADDS. So for the authentication protocols, we have SAML, WS Federation, and OpenID, where in the Azure AD. Azure AD includes federation services and many third-party services like Facebook. So if your users has an identity on Facebook, you can invite those users with their Facebook ID to be a part of your user community, user section. So these are the different pricing models. If you want to see, here we can have a look that we have different offerings of Active Directory. We have the free edition, we have the Office 365 edition, we have the P1 and P2 editions. To understand this better, you can go and explore. For now, whenever you create an account, you get a free subscription. If you want to use enhanced features of Azure Active Directory, like identity governance, platform identity privilege identity management, etc., so in that case you need to upgrade your plans. For that, you will be either going for P1 or P2 subscriptions. So here's a small link for the Active Directory editions. We'll be exploring this link. Also, I will be putting that in the video link. So I will open, you can just search quickly for Azure AD editions, and there will be this page which is understanding of the security parameters. So here you can see we have different pricing models. You can open any of the comparison here. So we have the free editions where you get limited number of services, whereas if you go with the premium services, there is no object limit of the number of directory objects that you can create, and also you can avail premium features like PIM, privileged identity management, sign in and audit reporting, etc. So to understand more about this, you can please explore this link. So, in order to avail the premium features, we can upgrade by paying a small monthly amount for the P1 or P2 tier. Also, we'll be seeing a feature called as Azure AD Join. Azure AD Join is a feature with which you can have your organization owned device which you can attach it to Azure Active Directory so that we can have a single sign on capability. When we have attached this particular system, sorry, when we have attached this particular system to the Azure AD join, in this case we have already joined this to the Azure Active Directory. So any other services which are for the Azure platform or powered by Microsoft, you don't need to enter the user ID and password again and again, because a single sign on, which is a property through which if you sign in into one of the application, the rest of the application you don't need to complete the full sign in process for getting inside those applications. Also, we have the users who can reset their own password, but this is a part of the premium services. Let's understand what users are, and we will be seeing the password reset process from the very scratch. So, what is a user? We have three categories of the users: cloud identity, directory synchronized, and guest users. So, a user, for example, you are having an organization in which you have 10 employees. Those 10 employees needs to have some user ID, and also along with the password they must have the proper permission. So how we can give the permission? We can give the permission in form of roles, and we can create IDs with the help of identity, which is in our case user identity. So we can have three formats in which we can have the user. So we can have the cloud identity, directory synchronized, or guest users. Cloud identity in the portal is known as a member, and directory synchronized are the sync users which is synchronized from the on-prem, and the guest users in the portal is known as guests. So let's first understand what a member is. So a member is a user that you create within your Azure Active Directory. So this type of users include administrative accounts or for users who are managed as a part of the organization, and the guest users are invited from outside Azure. For example, you have three of the users that you want to invite to your account as a user identity, but they are using their own Gmail account or their Facebook account. So when you invite them with your Gmail with their own Facebook account, so those are termed as a guest user. Also, this is termed as B2B. And when we have directory synchronized identities, so if we already have an on-prem and we have certain set of users, for example, John, and we want to synchronize those users to work in the cloud environment. In our case, it is Azure. So in that case, we use a service called as AD Connect, and we try to synchronize the identities of John. So he will be having his user ID and password. The same user ID and password he can use to access the Azure services also. So these are directory synchronized users. So we can synchronize them from the on-prem Active Directory. A synchronization activity occurs via AD Connect to bring this user's account in Azure. So these are the three categories of the users that we have. The same we can see in the portal as well. So let's go to the Azure portal. And here when we go to Azure Active Directory, We can view the users and groups. So when you go for users, here I just have my identity mentioned. So I will create a new user. So at the first, I am going to create a member, which is also known as cloud only user, which is an inbuilt part of our organization. So this is my domain, learners inside 2021 outlook.on microsoft.com. If I don't want to use this domain with the UPN that I assign to the each user, so I can buy a different domain name and then verify it in the Azure portal. So when I want, I can have two options in this case, or three options, how many number of domain names you verify. So I will create a UPN, user principal name. So the first user I want to create is ISAC. So I have this user ISAC at the rate learners inside 2021 at the rate, sorry, on microsoft.com. So the name is ISAC. You can give the name as ISAC J. Okay. And we have a auto generated password. We will copy this password. Then we have the properties section. In this, we can define all the properties related to the user. So we can give his first name. So we give his name as Isaac and the last name as J. And these all information are optional in nature. If you want to give the job title, so you can make him a developer of your organization, and you can give a company's name, for example any company XYZ, and you can give the department that he belongs to, the dev department, some employee ID type, etc. So all these information you can provide. And as you can see in the basic, we have account enabled, which means that I can enable his account. When I say if I want to disable his account, it is with this property that Isaac is joining on 30th of this month and I am creating the identity for Isaac today. So even if I share the user ID and password with Isaac, in that case as well, he cannot sign in until and unless the account is enabled. So you can fill these additional informations here. You can give assignments, that means you can add a role or a permission, or you can add him to a group if you want. So we'll go with a review and create, and this is the UPN of Isaac at the rate learners inside 2021 outlook.onmicrosoft.com, and we will create an ID. So when you refresh, we have another user. So it usually takes some time. So we'll refresh the whole page. So we have the ID of Isaac J created. So I want to sign in as Isaac J. For that purpose, I am opening a new incognito mode and I'm trying to go for portal.azure.com. So I will be entering the user ID of Isaac. So that's Isaac at the rate learners insight 2021 dot on microsoft.com. So I missed outlook. Next, sorry, I need to put it as at rate. So I will put the password which I have copied, and we will try to sign in. At the first sign in, he will be asked to change his password. So I will create a new password for him. And when you sign in as Isaac, he will be asked to get this account add it to any other MFA tool like Microsoft Authenticator. So I want to skip it for now. If you want, you can add him. So once or twice you have to do the skip process. So here we are in the dashboard and we are signed in as ISAC, right? Let's explore Azure Active Directory. So when you go to the Azure Active Directory option here, we can see that all the details regarding our ID of ISEC. What is the primary domain? It's Learners Insight 2021 outlook.onmicrosoft.com, because this user is a part of my domain. This is the default directory, and he can view the users, but he does not have the provision to create a user because he does not have those permissions. So here you can see he can see the users, but he does not have permission to create the user, neither invite external user. So to understand about the permissions, we click on roles and administrators. And here you can see the role of ISEC is just a user. So that's why he cannot perform certain activities. If we upgrade his permission, he can perform certain activities if he wants. So let's go back to our primary account. So if we just go to our primary account and go to the home page and go to Active Directory, we can now see what is the permission that I am having. Because I'm the owner of this account, so I have the highest privilege right, which is of a global administrator. If you want, you can search from different roles. We'll be discussing roles in detail as we go ahead. So that was the first thing. So we have discussed till now how to create a cloud identity, right? Now we'll be seeing how to create a guest user. To create a guest user, we'll go into the portal in the user section. And now the second thing, that you need to invite external user. When you click on inviting an external user, you are given an provision to enter the email ID of that user. For example, let's take the email ID as learnersinsight2020 at the rate gmail.com. That's my ID, and his name is Learners Insight. I can send an invite with a message that, hi, welcome to my team of Learners Insight. You can also keep someone in CC, so he will also get that message. You can go to the properties section and you can give his names, details of the names as learners1 new, that's a new account, or you can give the username as well, and you can give additional informations if you want. The same process in which we were creating a cloud user, the same process will apply for the guest user as well. The only difference is in the password section. Here we are assigning a password, or he is using a auto generated password, and in the case of a guest user, he is using his own Gmail account or whatever account that you are inviting to, that user's account password. So I will click on invite and you see a user invitation has been sent to that user. So when I refresh that page, you can now see that we have three users. One, two are members and one is a guest. The last one is the guest, Learners Insight, which I have invited with own email account. So if I go to this user, you can see in the properties section that this user is still not a part and has not accepted the invitation. That is why the invitation is in pending state, right? So you can edit the properties or revoke the sessions or do delete operations for the user. For all the users that you're creating, you can view the audit logs as well as the sign in logs for those users. What is audit logs? Audit logs are the activities which are performed within a time duration, which you can change if you want, or within the scope that you define. You can also download this information, and going on to the sign in information, you can see all the sign in activities. Here you can see no sign in activities as the user has still not logged in. The same is for the user that I have created within the account. Let's go to the understanding with ISEC. So if I view for ISEC, I have had few signing information and few audit log information of all the operations that has been performed. Also, if I want, I can download the information as a CSV or JSON script. So you can download. So you can open the CSV file to view all the detailed information. So that's about the user. The last category of the users, which are directory synchronized user, for that we have to understand the AD Connect process. So if you click on AD Connect, you have the option to get started with that. For that, you have to download the AD Connect within your on-prem environment and then go with the cloud sync operation. So you can synchronize your users from the Azure Active Directory, from the Azure ADDS. So we are just sorry for the misspell. It is ADDS to Azure Active Directory. So from the on-prem environment, we are moving that user to the cloud environment. So we'll be having a separate session for AD Connect. Let's understand the properties of the Active Directory. Like when we go to the users section, we have the option that we can set up multi-factor authentication for all the users that we have. So for user authentication, we can go to per user MFA. So you have to sign in with the information again. So here I can set up for ISEC, I can enable the MFA. So you can set it up for all the users that you have, and you can see the service settings will ask them to set up MFA either with a code in the form of a SMS or the authenticator app code or any other MFA tool that they have set up. So in the MFA, they will get either a text message through phone, notification through mobile app, or verification from mobile app or hardware token. When you go back to the users section, here we have the option to download users or create new users. There are more options like you can view all the deleted users in this section for the 30 days duration. If within the 30 days you want to restore the user, you can do that. Otherwise, that user after 30 days will be deleted completely. So we have seen some of the fundamental information regarding the tenant part. So I would request any one of you that if you have any questions related to tenant or the identities which we have created in form of users or related to the difference between ADDS versus Azure AD, you can please go down and put your questions in the chat box, and also do like, share and subscribe for more information where we are going to discuss about the different properties along with the groups concept. See you in the next video. Till then, take care.